I'm Adrian Manns, and this is your 2-minute strategy session. Got a lot of questions recently about the stocks and sectors on the radar portion of the Around the Horn trading plan. Let's take a look at one of those and figure out just what it is that I mean by sector confirmation. So the one we're going to have today is MCO. It's Moody's Corporation. It's an infield fly short setup with an entry at $40.61 and a scalp target at $40.37. Now we see the stock opened and it traded around our entry price initially, went up right into yesterday's resistance area. This is why this was not an Around the Horn plan trade. This was a stock that would have had about a 1/4 point of loss for about a 1/4 point of gain. That, of course, not acceptable. So if this would have been a stocks to watch setup, you would have set your stop loss right about here. And you would have seen that that's not a 1.5 to 1 risk-reward ratio. But as a stocks and sectors on the radar setup, it's acceptable because what we're doing is we're just saying if it goes against us 10 cents from this entry line before it goes in our favor, we're going to pull the plug on the trade. So it's just a very simple kind of a setup. It's a scalp. You're looking for it to move in your direction before it moves against your direction. And in this case, we get this nice move from the entry right down to the profit target and beyond. Of course, you're probably not on board for that extension. I'm certainly not on board for that extension, as we are just looking for these to be very quick moves. Now, we do see that at the time of the entry trigger, the financial sector index was moving lower. It led the stock lower, led us through our entry price. That's just what we want to see, is a sell-off in the sector pulling us into the trade rather than the trade leading the sell-off in the sector, right? You always want to see these two things that we know are correlated, moving in the same direction with the sector pulling the stock. Later in the session, we see that we have another trigger. Once again, we had sector confirmation on this one. The sector was moving lower at the same time that we had an entry trigger. Unfortunately, this time, we stop out 10 cents against us before we move 10 cents in our favor. And the rest of the session then bounces around at support on both the index and the stock as they both start to oscillate around a pivot line. Radar setups are generally best early in the session. You definitely don't want to be looking for scalp entries on these consolidation ranges, especially not at those posted entry prices. Once we get into a range, typically we're just going to bounce up and down off the top and bottom of that range. Not a big trade by any stretch of the imagination, but a lot of you wanted to know how I set these up, and that is how I do it. So for TraderInsight.com, I'm Adrian Manns, and that's your 2-minute strategy.